1, 3, 5, 7.
He is an award-winning camera operator and director spanning TV, film, and music video productions with around 200 credits. He's worked on most of Rob Zombie's films, MacGruber, The Nightmare on Elm Street reboot, Jonah Hex, Killer Joe, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, Jack Reacher, This Is the End, The Interview, Avengers Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, Neighbors 1 and 2, Popstar, Never Stop, and Central Intelligence, Office Christmas Party, the Annabelle films, We're Almost There, The Disaster Artist, The Nun, Shazam, American Horror Story, Zombieland, Double Tap, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, among many, many others. He recently worked on Top Gun Maverick and Salem's Lot, and The Fabelmans, a Steven Spielberg film that's currently in post-production. In 2013, he directed the third film in the Hatchet franchise, a number of music videos for Slayer, as well as other bands, and his newest film, which brings us here today, Studio 666, hit theaters February 25th. Thank you very much, BJ, for being here today.
Thanks for having me on your show, guys. I appreciate it.
Are you not impressed? Look at this man's diaphragm. After reading all, he's about to pass out over here.
I thought we were probably going to have to wrap the show after you named all that.
But knock on wood, I had 2 cigarettes before this. I'm still catching my breath.
All right, so let's jump right into it.
You boosted my ego. I'm reading all that stuff.
That's our goal before we get into it. Make sure you're in the right place.
All right, so we'll jump right into it. Now, your first credits were working as a grip on various films in your mid-20s before getting into camera operating and eventually directing. What was the inspiration that got you into filmmaking?
You know, my grandfather was an old actor from back in the days. His name was Leif Erikson. And as a kid, I used to go to film sets with him and I'd kind of see like what it was he was doing, which actually opened up my eyes to go, oh, you don't have to have a regular job really and truly. Like you can be creative and get into this business and make a living with it. He did he made a great living off of all the films that he did. He was really my first inspiration of how to do it. So I started making home movies with my buddies and blowing up, cars with firecrackers and action films that were super ridiculous. And then, I went through this whole punk band phase where I thought I was going to be a punk rocker and that didn't go through. So then I moved to LA and my grandmother, when my grandfather had passed, she was telling me like, you should do it. You can do whatever you want to do. Just follow your dreams. So I went to film school and eventually got into being a grip on sets, which actually gave me like set etiquette, made me learn the ins and outs of how a set works. And then, my whole goal was to direct, but then I started really getting interested in camera operating and it kind of took me on that path a ways, which was probably the best, path I could have taken for like learning so much about directing, lighting, what how long it takes for people to get things done, what it takes to run a set, all that stuff. So it was a really fun progression, of where I am today. And I'm still trying to progress with doing this stuff. I'm still learning a lot. So that's really how it all came about, just early on.
Yeah, I think that's essential in the people that make it, is having somebody in their life that believes in them and lets them know that this isn't crazy. Like or it might be crazy, but do it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important because some people just, and for me, I knew I could do it, but for the people out there that don't have someone in the business, really all it takes is just getting, around film sets, like moving to the towns like, Atlanta or someplace like that where tax incentives are big and a lot of the movies are shooting now, meeting people and getting in. It's not something that's unattainable. You don't have to have family to do it. You just have to have the drive and want to work hard.
Yeah. But before we move on, I wanted to ask you, because I know Michael G. Kehoe is one that kind of helped get us in touch. How did you meet Michael G. Kehoe? He seems to know everybody.
I met him on Battle Los Angeles.
Okay.
We were doing a movie in Shreveport, not Los Angeles. We only did a little bit in Los Angeles, but we shot most of the movie in Shreveport and Baton Rouge, and Mike Kehoe was actually craft service on that. And that's how I met Mike. And we've been friends ever since. He's a great guy. Super cool.
Yeah. He makes an impression. So you guys met in LA.
Battlefield, Louisiana.
Yeah.
That LA. We met LA in the South.
You worked on you worked with Rob Zombie on multiple projects since Devil's Rejects in 2005, and you'd go on to work on Halloween 1 and 2, The Lords of Salem, and 31 as well. Looking at your body of work, and you talked about, you kind of started in music and transitioned to film. I would safely assume that you were a huge fan of Rob Zombie. What was it like kind of working with him on those productions?
Oh, he's awesome. He's actually taught me a lot, of, and I've said it before with some other people, like they've asked me about that. It's like, he's great because he breaks the mold of traditional filmmaking. He's very artistic, and you kind of learn how to take away like your standard rules of filmmaking and you break that. And, as long as it's still, the eye lines and everything works out right, and you get these cool shots, you can break the mold. You can switch eye lines. You get, there's a certain way you have to shoot things on sets, and he breaks that mold. So it's funny.
Yeah.
So like when I'm working on regular movies and I go do a movie with Rob, I have to untrain my brain. And then when I'm done working with Rob, when I go back to the regular filmmaking, I have to retrain my brain because sometimes I'm still in that mode. So that's really kind of like how, working with him is really interesting because you really like get to see things in a different way, and it's more artistic and fun.
I think it's fun working with a director like that because again, you go to film school, you go to all these places where it says this, and this. It's like, no, we're not doing that. We'll get our point across, but you still are a professional at it. So I think it's pretty dope.
And cool for you to have both tools in your pocket after those experiences. That's awesome.
It's funny because like even on Studio 666, there's a scene where I actually cross the line. And I remember that when we were doing that, like, I remember the director of photography, the one, because we had two directors of photography because we had pre-pandemic and post. But I remember I crossed the line. He goes, I don't think we can do that. I'm like, trust me, this is going to work. It's going to be fine. And it works fine. No one even noticed it. Yeah, it's just funny.
I mean, we already saw it twice, so you didn't cross the line, trust me. And even if you did, it was the way to do it. Now, in 2006, you were a Steadicam operator on the horror comedy Hatchet. In 2010, you worked on the sequel. Now, in 2013, you made your directorial debut with Hatchet 3. Explain to us in the audience what it was like to step into the director role for the first time, and especially under the circumstances of taking the helm of a franchise with the original and a sequel under it already. So, like I say, that you've worked on since the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, the difference with that was that as a camera operator, I had to do all the framing and work with the director of photography. As when taking the helm of being a director, now I'm the one making the decisions and working more with the actors and like going more story wise with it. That was the hardest part for me, was learning how to kind of break away from like the just every frame of like how things should be shot and things. Mm-hmm. The good thing about that was I already worked with a bunch of those actors before. So I already it was very warm and inviting. Like it was easy to deal with because we already had a kind of rapport. So that was nice in that way. Like it wasn't scary. It was more inviting.
Yeah.
And for me, like I wanted to change Hatchet 3. I wanted to go a little bit darker with it. I wanted to make it look more cinematic. That was what I brought to the table on that one. I thought I tried to, if I could have gone further and made it darker, I would have done that and made it like much more of like a real tale, but obviously you have to stick to kind of like the vibe of what has originally been done. So we still had to keep it very cheesy and campy and kind of go that route, which is fine. It's and that's what the fans want. Yeah. I wanted to take it and go more serious tone, but what are you going to do? You can't change what's already been kind of established.
Right. That's what I was curious about, like transitioning, like taking that transition into director in a familiar territory. If it was like more so the pro of having that warm environment where you kind of feel safe, or if it was more so the con of like the pressure of taking the helm of a property that you've been involved in since the beginning.
I wasn't worried about it too much. I knew what I was wanting to do visually. If I couldn't change the tone of the movie and make it more serious, I could at least change the look of the movie and do kind of like, and put my stamp on that. Like with Victor Crowley, what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it very more contrast lighting on him. So he wasn't like brightly just jumping into your face. I wanted to keep it dark. I wanted the firelight to really be more of like the motivated light on him in certain things. I just, that's the kind of, even the aspect ratio, I changed that so it would look a little bit more cinematic, because the other Hatchet movies were 16:9. Mine's 2:40. More of like a scope look, and that was what I did. And I used Panavision glass, which I'm a huge fan of. Like that's the look of the movie is very important to me, and Panavision glass to me establishes real movie look. And that was the first time that any of the Hatchet movies had Panavision glass.
Very cool. Got to put the signature on it.
Got to.
In 2011, you worked on Killer Joe with legendary director William Friedkin. What was that like to work with the director of arguably the greatest horror film ever made?
Again, it's another learning experience. I have to say, Billy has his own way of doing things, and he definitely has his own style.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't think some of it would fly nowadays, but he's watching like how he worked with the actors and what he would do is really inspirational and really fun to watch. He he didn't allow any chairs on set, so no one sits down. He basically wants to shoot one take and move on, because he always says, I got to get home to watch Oprah, Mo. He calls everybody Mo. Yeah, it's hilarious. So and the thing that's cool about Billy is that he would, he rehearses with his actors, and then we kind of get a rundown of like what the actors are going to do when they come on set. So me and the first AC would have to basically map out everything. So we would make sure the focus was still good because we didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't have rehearsals. They would come in and they would do like first time we'd see the scene, they would just come in and do it and hope to God that we actually got most of it.
Wow.
We did do coverage, but once you saw it play out in a master, then you kind of knew it was going to happen when we had to go to coverage. So then we'd kind of get a layout of it.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. It was a very interesting way to work, and just hanging out with him on weekends and like going to dinners and talking, he would tell stories about The Exorcist and like talk about all that. It's kind of a great, it's just one of those things too, like in this business, you get to do those kind of things and experience like a one-on-one with people that I look up to, that I know a lot of people look up to. And it was fantastic. He's great. Billy's great.
It's wild that it sounds like the polar opposite of somebody like Stanley Kubrick's methods, but at the end of the day, the results are very similar as far as like the quality of the product.
Mm-hmm.
Like one take versus poor what's her name with the
17 takes. Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't come without its stresses, because when it's every day, it's like, okay, we got to be on, we got to make sure we're on point. Because Billy's not going to really, like, we may get a take two sometimes, and that was like, okay, let's make sure we knock this out of the park. It was a bit scary, but at the end, like when it's all over, you can definitely, he's very thankful and he's very cool.
You got to get the Oprah. I mean, priorities.
Come on now.
You got it. It's Mo. We got to get the scene. Oprah's coming on.
Never ever would have made that connection. That's awesome. Killer Joe also seemed to be the beginning of a working relationship with Caleb Deschanel, someone we recently became aware of when we did Being There. You guys would go to work together on Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, Jack Reacher, and Unforgettable. Operating the camera with such a seasoned director of photography like that, what was the most valuable thing that you learned?
I learned a lot from Caleb, just watching his dedication to how he does and how he runs his set and what he wants to do. He's very passionate about like his lighting and about how things should look and how the frames should be, So again, you got to be on your toes and make sure you're doing the right things. You don't want to upset anybody. So I learned I learned a lot about just really making sure that I'm listening, really intently on like what the director of photography wants when I'm setting up shots and doing things like that. Cause I want to give him the best I can do with the amount of time given. He's a legend. I mean, the guy shot Black Stallion, the right stuff. He's phenomenal. And just honestly watching his dedication, his planning, all that is just really impressive. And, it's one of those things where instead of going to film school, you're on a set and you're watching the people that you read about, and you're watching how they work, and you just go, wow, I can't, this is the best film school I've ever had, and I'm getting paid for it.
Yeah.
I'm not paying for it. I'm getting paid to do it's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. When I was watching the behind the scenes of Being There, I really appreciated how like methodical and intentional he was in what he did, like, and the simplicity. Like he seemed like a very less is more type of director of photography.
He just knows what he's doing, and his planning is good. I wouldn't say it's a less is more approach, because there's times we've lit crazy stuff, but it's not. He just knows what he needs, and he comes in and goes, well, we're going to be doing this, and the sun's going to be coming from that direction. But when the sun's gone, I can have these lights, and I can recreate the sunlight going this way. And he knows.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ultimate planning.
Yeah, doing it for that long, you gotta develop a confidence, and yeah. Before we move on from Killer Joe, I just want to ask about the chicken wing scene. Oh, God. Was it as comfortable to shoot as it is to watch?
It was horribly uncomfortable to do that scene. Because I was right in there with the camera, and it was it was one of those things. Actually, my wife was on the job too. She was doing makeup, so sadly, she was in control of continuity of the fried chicken bits if we had to get different angles. And so it was kind of like, we were there together just being like, oh my God. And the whole crew, it was very uncomfortable, but but Tina Gershon, she got in there, she killed that part. She was awesome. And, look, sometimes you shoot things, you just walk out and go, what did I just shoot?
We said, what did I just watch? And I watched it with my wife, who like only knew Matthew McConaughey from like 10 Things not 10 Things I Hate About, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. She knew that Matthew. Yeah, so That was her like introduction to the other side of Matthew McConaughey.
He's good at both.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. He's a great hunk.
Yeah.
Those two, it's a dangerous combo.
All right.
Yeah, no, that scene was uncomfortable. It definitely was, you know.
It was great though. I mean, great filmmaking. Yeah, very
great.
effective.
Yes. Now, Lonely Island adjacent projects seem to be a recurring theme of your career. From MacGruber in 2010, That's My Boy in 2012, and 2016's pop star Jorma Taccone has even been in your music.
Yorma. Sorry, I did that to you on purpose.
Yorma.
Why would you do that? You should have said it's close to shawarma. Thank you. Jorma Taccone has even been in your music videos. What is that crew like to work with? And is there a major difference that stands out in your approach to comedy versus horror cinematography?
So it's funny you mentioned those movies because I learned a lot with those movies because and I kind of incorporated it with Studio 666 also. It was kind of a Judd Apatow approach of things where they basically you get people running in and then they do their lines. You got two cameras shooting to make sure you get all the coverage you need because a lot of it goes into improv. And so those movies are really a ton of them. We have a script just like we had Studio 666. But if you let the actors or non-actors in my case, and a lot kind of go off in their own world and just improv what they're doing, you get a lot better material. Honestly, you get a lot more laughs because they're actually really doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously, they can't go off subject, because we're making a movie, but they can actually make their own words and really say what they want to say to people. I learned a lot doing those movies because that is kind of what they do. They basically do a ton of improv and you just throw out lines and they say it again and they throw out more lines and they say it again or say something different. And you get really good performances out of that. And everybody starts laughing, and everybody's having a good times. And that's what I've taken from those movies. That's really kind of the style they do. Like even Pop Star, it's like, me and my buddy, we were always the cameraman running around and, just listening to them riff and kind of go off on their own tangents was really funny. And you see them just lose their minds sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is great. So I've taken a lot comedy wise and I've taken like the way they shoot those into my own account, especially for a movie like what we had, because you didn't have a lot of time. We didn't have a really long schedule. So you just had to like let everybody be more comfortable.
He actually compared Studio 666 to This Is the End in like the improv nature of it, the meta kind of feel that it's like real people in a supernatural type of thing.
And it's actually happening, and it's like it was its own genre is what it was to me. And again, I knew what I was going into, so I wasn't expecting De Niro and Pacino to come out with these Oscar wins. But when we were into it, I'm like, no, if you take this for what this is, and we'll get into it, this is how you got to do it. It's a great movie. It's no overacting at any point because I think that would have happened if you would have said, listen, guys, we're gonna have Juilliard coming in and train you guys for no, let them be them.
Well, that's the thing. We weren't trying to make a movie with all sorts of like amazing acting. This was a giant throwback to the old school band movies. That was always the intention. And honestly, it's more fun when the acting isn't that great. And I'm sorry, guys. I think, I love the Foo Fighters and I think they did a damn good job with what we did. Right. Mm-hmm. But honestly, from day one, when we and Dave were talking about what we were going to do, that was intentional. Like we wanted it to feel like those movies, and it's funny because you see critics and people like that, like being like, oh, the acting. It's like, what do you guys think's going on, guys? Obviously you don't get what we're trying to do.
Right.
Pat is wonderfully terrible.
I love Pat.
He
gives an Oscar-worthy scream towards the end. That's that 10-minute scream when he's screaming through everything. Like so many people have been cracking up watching that. So Pat's a screamer.
So trivia note on that, it was just funny you bring that up. Pat came up to me when we were doing ADR and he goes, I just want to let you know that my voice isn't the same anymore. And because of all the screaming I did on that job, I can't scream anymore.
Wow.
He basically destroyed Pat's vocal cords.
Oh my God. Pat laying it all out on the line. Tell him he's a method voice actor. Tell him that when you see him, tell him he's a method voice actor now.
All right. Another comedy all-star team that you frequently collaborate with is Rogen and Friends from Neighbors 1 and 2, The Interview, The Disaster Artist, and Future Man. Their work seems to be largely improvisational. So, and you kind of brought this up just now, but when you have all the actors and you don't really know what they're going to do, how do you prepare for that kind of blocking?
Well, that's the reason why Neighbors looks like it's mostly handheld, which it is almost all handheld. It's because you don't know what they're going to do. So the feel of it, we were always like me and the other operator would run around with the cameras on our shoulders and we just basically follow the action. That was really the main way of doing it. Even Disaster Artist was all handheld for the most part. A couple Steadicam shots, The only one that was not like that was The Interview. The Interview was more contained and more blocked out because we wanted to make that look like an 80, like a 90s action film, or keep it like in that kind of vein, make it more of a serious film. They still improv'd, but we didn't have the handheld thing going on. But we did have 2 cameras all the time that were always kind of gunning. When we knew they were going to have conversations and talk back and forth, we always had the coverage going so that we always could capture that. But that one was a little bit more contained and a little more like planned out and blocked out. That's why, and I love what we did in that movie. I'm proud of that one.
Yeah, it came out great. It looks great too, and it does capture that feel of the like 80s, 90s, early 90s action films.
I think it does. Definitely.
Helicopters and tank battle.
Yeah, big explosions that you never look at.
It's weird when also a movie like that, when the president of the United States is talking about a movie called The Interview, when all that stuff was going on. So it's just very strange.
That's crazy. Now you've done horror. You've done comedy, as we've been speaking about, and you even done blockbuster superhero films such as Shazam. You know what that stands for? No, you don't. Avengers: Age of Ultron and Ant-Man. These films, of course, seems to come with more money, bigger budget, more hands on deck, more moving parts. Now, how do all of those factors affect the creative process compared to when you're doing a lesser budgeted film?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of the bigger movies that I've been on have a bit more contained, like more planned out shots. Like you'll get animatics. There's honestly, like someone will come with an iPad and we'll be like, all right, this is what we're shooting today. This is the action. And we would actually just look at those things and go, okay, we got to set up this shot, and match all that stuff. It's a bit more controlled. Not to say that the directors don't get a freedom or a creativity. They do, they get their say so. But when it comes to the action and things like that, it's usually already kind of like, usually the second, second unit will be the action unit, where I'll be on the first unit and we're doing all the dialogue and all the talking stuff. And every now and then we'll get the action. But the second unit usually just is on their own and they're doing all the stuff with stunt people. So a lot of times, like with Shazam, like we did a lot of cool stuff and we did a lot of the action. But for the most part, the major action that I saw when the movie came out was all second unit. And I'm like, oh, that was cool. I'm doing more of the actor stuff. And I would lead in with the stunt stuff. Then they take over. And then we do the ending where the actors come back together. And that's kind of how that works out.
It's cool.
But smaller budget movies, you do get to be more creative. You do get to really be more involved. I think between the $10 to $20 million movies, I think those are great because it's just enough money to make a great movie, but you also are creative with your crew and everybody else. You get to actually still make those decisions because you don't have those kind of resources, the animatics or anything like that. You have to be pretty resourceful. When you have all that money, you make awesome movies and you have a schedule that also does it. That's the other thing. Budgets. If you have one of the Marvel budgets, you have 70 to 80 to over 100 days to shoot a movie. Mm-hmm. When you don't have money like Studio 666, we had 27 days to shoot the whole movie, right. But ended up being 32 because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So you have to be fast and creative. You don't have all the time to concentrate on these really awesome, detail oriented action set pieces. Those are
the Marvel films and the big cinematic blockbusters are great. They're awesome entertainment, but as an aspiring filmmaker, and I've told him this, I have no desire to, if I was offered a job today to go work at Marvel Studios, I don't want to. I don't want what they have to do. That undertaking, it just seems too large. So many moving parts going on.
Well, if I'm not here next week, you know where I'm at, right? They call me. I'll be here.
Yeah, I know where you're going.
I'll take a Marvel movie. I'll do it.
It's like you have a job for 10 to 15 years. Creatively,
even that is too much. That's it's a whole lot. I like the small scale. Like when I think of filmmaking, when I got into really wanting to make movies, it's looking at people like Wes Anderson or Quentin Tarantino. Yeah. The large independent productions is the biggest I would ever scale up to.
You don't get those budgets a lot nowadays. Like when I first started, there used to be the low budget indies, and then there was a medium budget, and then there was a big budget movie kind of thing. And the medium budgets don't come around much anymore. And the low budgets that we used to have here, they're not as much as they were. Now it's you either have a $5 million budget or you have something 15 to 20. It's very rare to get the indie films, kind of budgets around here, especially here in Los Angeles, maybe other places, but I haven't seen it in a long time.
It's just weird with the streaming platforms. There's so many more places to just put material out with low risk. It seems like it should be the opposite.
Yeah, no, I know you would think, but even the streaming movies, they throw a lot of money in at those, The Gray Man that's coming out. That was huge.
Yeah.
Like all my friends worked on it. It was like this massive budget streaming going straight to Netflix movie, you know?
Wow. That's crazy. Times are changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 year after Halloween 2, you would get to take part in reimagining one of the greatest horror movie franchises in the history of horror movie franchises, the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. Your love for horror is obvious. What was it like to be a part of these projects? You also, of course, did Halloween with Rob Zombie, where you're breathing new life into franchises that you grew up watching.
Nightmare on Elm Street, like actually, there's a lot of things on IMDb that sometimes it just says I was on the movies and I wasn't there the whole time.
Oh,
Nightmare
where?
on Elm Street, I was there. I did the reshoots of that. Like I did all the reshoots, like the opening sequence in the diner. I did all that stuff. I did a lot of the ending of the movie because they shot in Chicago. They came back, and I remember getting a call from my buddy Eric, who the DP that shot half of 666. He's like, dude, I got a call for Nightmare on Elm Street. And I'm a huge Nightmare on Elm Street fan. So I kind of freaked out about that. I was like, yes, this is so cool. Cause I love that. So yeah, I got to go be a part of that. I mean, we did a lot of stuff in the movie, you know, I wasn't there full time, but I did have a hand in that. And like that first iconic shot in the remake where the hand comes into frame in the diner and all that was all me. You know, anything in that diner, all that stuff. I did all that. Did a bunch of the stuff with like the Freddy coming through the wall and the girl dropping down out of the sky into the bed and all that. We did all that.
Freddy coming through the wall.
Yeah,
that movie took so much heat because people are never going to be happy with the reboot, no matter how great it is. But I thought it was I really, and I'm a diehard Freddy fan from like I was probably too young to be a Freddy fan when I started watching A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I really appreciated the risks that you guys were taking with that production and the way they brought a little bit more dimension to the character.
Yeah,
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job, and I thought that the way it looked and everything was phenomenal. Jeff Cutter, the director of photography, did a killer job. It was nice and dark. It was, you know, it had a little more backstory with Freddy Krueger and like what went on, which was cool. So I thought it was cool. But look, when you're doing things, even with Rob when he's doing the Halloween movies, you're not gonna appease everybody. There's always gonna be people that are upset about it, you know, like because they're so into that one movie that they're so like in love with. Like, oh, I love John Carpenter. Look, I love John Carpenter's Halloween, and then I did Halloween remake with Rob, and I love what we did on that one. I love what we did for part 2. You know, like I thought we did some really amazing stuff. But you're always gonna have haters out there. Any movie you do, people are gonna hate it. You know, this is the way this is, you know.
The world we live in. Well, speaking of not hating, we've talked about rock music, we've talked about horror, we've talked about comedy. And now we're going to talk about the culmination of your career crashing into one project.
All right, you guys all ready? Here it comes.
Let's get into it. Studio 666.
All right. You said in another interview that the most challenging part of the production was navigating the hilly landscape of the property that the house sat on in Encino. But we'd like to know what the most challenging aspect was as far as pre-production and taking this from an idea that you're meeting with Dave Grohl about to cameras actually rolling.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of variables. It's hard, you know, because like, look, my whole thing that I was always nervous about is that I have to now combine a band movie with a horror film with a comedy with guys that aren't actors. Like they've been in front of the camera and they're great, you know, but like I had all this pressure on me for getting the comedy, getting the, you know, the horror stuff, getting, you know, just making it that whole vibe of the band film. So all through, you know, pre-pro, you know, we were just trying to plan accordingly on how to do that stuff. And that was to me, that was the biggest challenge of this movie, was just making sure that we try to, you know, be as true as possible to get all the elements that we possibly could. And, you know, to me, that was the hardest thing, because you're always going home going, I hope that, you know, I did the right thing. I hope this is, you know, like I'll tell you right now, I go home and I go, I don't know if I was good. Did I get it?
I think of all the best questions on the way home from the interview. Like tonight, I'll be like, God damn it. Why didn't I think about that?
Well, I'll tell him this. You definitely did nail, like, listen, you nailed the horror. You got that right out the way. Cause I told him I didn't know what this, but I thought you said this was comedy and some other stuff going on. Like that first opening scene, I'm like, yo, this finna be some deep, dark shit. You know what I'm saying? To see this hammer time, to see that hammer going to that girl's head and shit, like that was, you got the horror out the way right away.
That was very intentional, because I wanted to make sure we opened the movie with a darker tone. Because I mean, look, to be honest, when someone says, "Hey, we're going to see a movie starring the Foo Fighters," they're going to go, "It's going to be funny," you know, it's going to be silly and fun, and of course, yes, that's what we were going for. But I wanted to open the movie pretty drastic and pretty nasty. I mean, dude, there was a cut that scene went on for like way longer and it was way gnarlier, and I had to cut it down to what it is now. I mean, it was brutal. But
Oh my gosh.
the version you saw is a very whittled down version. I like to go
actually-
big, and then everybody tell me I need to pull it back.
Yeah, when we talked to Marty Matulus last
He
night,
mentioned that.
and he said to say hello, by the way.
I love him.
And he said that yeah, a lot had to be cut because you would hear BJ in the back going, "Hit it again, more blood."
Oh yeah,
I mean,
It was good.
if you take something beyond the extreme, it goes from being controversial to being hilarious.
yeah. Well, the other thing too is my whole take is if I know I'm going to get a ton of stuff, I know I can scale it back. It's you can't go the other way. So
Right.
you might as well, if you manage your time right, you know you can go to that realm, and then you basically put it all in the edit, and then you go, all right, what do you guys think? You know, because for me,
Yeah.
I like doing a lot of brutal stuff in my movies. Like I just do like violence and things like that. Nothing, you know, like that kind of stuff. I like to go and push the envelope with it a bit, with the brutality and the violence and the blood and the gore.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me. But I allow myself to pull it back, you know, and that's and because you have to play ball with other people. It's not just this is what I want. I'm the damn director. Blah blah blah. No, people come to you and go, hey man, you might want to. It's a little rough. Right? Let me get back into the edit bay, and then you start killing your babies that you loved, and you know, then you turn into the softer version, which is still pretty dark.
And it leaves the possibility open for a director's cut or something.
There you go.
When they're ready.
Director's cut.
Yeah, Jesus.
Growing up a fan of horror, would you have ever believed that John Carpenter would have had a hand in the theme song for your film?
Yeah, man, that was like bucket list stuff. Like I remember me and Dave were talking about it, and we just started bringing up John Carpenter because we wanted to kind of have that, you know, like the old vibe, the old 80s kind of vibe, you know, like the kills we wanted to keep very Friday the 13th funny, like super over the top, stupid, silly. But we wanted to have kind of the vibe. Even the shadow people that I wrote into this, you know, had the writers put in the script. That's a full on ode to the fog. So when we got John, when we reached out to him, it was, you know, Dave had helped out Daniel Davies years ago, and John was like, "Dude, you helped out Daniel like so long ago that I'll write you guys a theme song." And then we were kind of like, "That's awesome, but would you like to also come be in the movie for a second?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." So that was like, oh my God, you know, you actually have the guy that in kindergarten, when I would walk around with the Escape from New York theme song in my head, you know, I was just like, my God, I have John Carpenter right here in front of me. I'm directing John Carpenter, and he's writing a theme song for us. It just was like you know, I don't get very starstruck anymore, but that was, I will say, a moment where I was like, wow, you know, this is really happening, you know, and I'm so lucky.
Something magical's happening.
It was pure magic when he was there.
It was great for opening up the film with this, like, it established that feeling of like a nostalgic horror movie. Like and then the music kind of like gracefully transitioned from this John Carpenter-esque theme to this devil, like,
I thought
heavy
Supernatural
metal.
was about to come on. The Winchesters was about to pop out or something. It was going dark, man.
It was really cool what the sound did.
It was. Now, let me ask you this. Speaking of going dark, now, was Spooky Movie a title that was really considered, or was it a placeholder? How did you guys land on Studio 666?
We knew that we weren't going to call the movie Spooky Movie because there's already a scary movie. Like, we just needed the title in production to like kind of get things going so we could get all the permits and things like that. And so we just basically went off with, you know, Spooky Movie. And that was just basically like a placeholder for us. And then we started throwing around ideas. Like, I think one time it was, one was going to be Blood on the Tracks. Was kind of an idea of the name of the movie, and we were throwing around ideas, and I don't know who came up with it, but yeah, Studio 66 was the one that everybody landed on. That's the one we went for.
Blood on the Tracks is good.
I like Blood on the Tracks.
I really like Blood on the Tracks. I thought that was a good one. But yeah, everybody went for Studio 666. I think in another country it's called something else, like The Trouble with Studio 666.
I was also going to say the only other better title other than Studio 666 would have been Bone Structure.
Oh yeah,
man, listen, we were dying at that Bone Structure, man. So
that stupid CD cover that says Bone Structure. Yes. So it's funny because I have my old band had basically almost the same logo, except there was it's like the skeleton like crawling on the ground with a bottle of beer and like pointing its way. And so I was like, this is so ridiculous. So I gave that to Teresa and I said, hey, can we just kind of model it after my horrible band sticker? And
oh my God, that's cool.
Yeah, so she did. So when it pops up, it's really silly.
Not only giving nods to like well-known old 80s horror films, you're also getting nods to your own
But
history.
it's not an Easter egg; it's an Easter deviled egg. See what I did there?
That
All
was
right.
stupid.
Well, my old
Well, it was-
my old band CD is on the table when Dave's looking for things. You'll never see it because it's all kind of covered up. But I did have my old band sitting there on the in the basement when he's going through all the tapes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Southern
amazing.
spirit.
Now, take this with a grain of salt. IMDb trivia states that it was filmed in secret during the pandemic, and you did kind of speak to this. And that was one of the first productions to return after the pandemic. What was that like, starting, then having to stop because of everything, and then coming back and having to finish under that tight schedule?
Yeah, I mean that was tough because we started and we were going and things were going really great and we were all having a good time. And then I'll never forget the last night of shooting. Like we started getting hints on the news of like what was going on in the world. We were all getting a bit concerned. And we only had like 6 or 7 days left of shooting. So it's like, oh man. And that night it was just raining. There was the whole end of the movie. It was just pouring rain on us. And I just remember being like, I kept hearing from the producers, like, we might have to shut down. We don't know how long we might have to shut down because everybody's going to shut down. Everybody's going to go into lockdown. It was a weird time for all of us. So everything was just, how you shoot movies. We shut down thinking maybe 2-3 weeks we'll come back. Cut to like 6 months later, we come back, and during that whole time I was editing via remote here in my office with an editor, but we only got to as far as we could possibly get. And then the whole time, like, I don't know if we're going to come back because,
wow,
what people don't realize is that in movie making, there's a budget. And say we were shooting at like the stages at Warner Brothers or something like that. Well, then, okay, they have to rent the stage and the sets stay up. No, we had to keep renting that location through the pandemic.
Wow.
So you have to remember that like a lot of our budget that we had to go into renting this mansion in Encino. And you can only imagine how much that is per month for 6 months straight. And that's also not including keeping wardrobe, keeping all these things. Because also what people don't realize is that when you make a movie, you're renting gear, you're renting all this stuff. So the money just, if you're sitting there, just, you have to keep paying rental on these things. And
wow,
it took a lot of budget. And then coming back, now we had to learn how to go through testing, 3 times a week. How long is it going to take for all the crew to come back to sets? How long is it going to take to get every single crew member through testing? Because we were one of the first jobs back. We were the guinea pigs. There was some TV shows that came back, but we were one of the first features. So we had to learn how to do all that stuff. So coming back, now we're wearing masks. No one can, like, when I'm yelling things, it's like, it's like muffled, and I'm wearing goggles, and the whole crew's doing that. We all have to social distance. Everybody has to stay away from each other. So we're all kind of like, your norm of running in there being like, hey, just check this out, do this. It's like, no. And you have people on set saying, back up 6 feet, and so you're like, oh, yeah, I gotta remember that, and it took a lot of getting used to. But the cool thing is that all the people believed in the project so much that were there from the first part and were having so much fun that everybody came back. Everybody knew what we were doing and we were having a good time with the movie and knew that we were just making a fun film, and they all wanted to be part of it. And it was really nice, to see that and have everybody come up at the end of the day being like, this is the most fun I've had on a film set in years. And I've laughed all day long. This is great. So even with the pandemic and coming back and all the learning curves and all that, it still was a labor of love with the cast and crew and everybody. Everybody's heart, blood, sweat, and tears were in it.
Yeah, I'd imagine that had to be the most challenging part, is just that uncertainty, wondering if you put all this work into something that wasn't going to see the light of day, and working on and editing it while all this is going on. But that had to be so validating for to come back and the whole cast still be there. It's almost like that old saying, if you love something, let it go. If it comes back, it was meant to be.
Yeah, exactly. I'm proud with what we did. It's like it was tough. This whole process was tough, and but it was tough, but working with like the best people ever. And in my opinion, we had such a great time. And I think that the fun of it all shows on screen.
The chemistry is everything in that. I can tell you that.
You feel like the way I could best describe the energy of the movie is when Dave Grohl just randomly hugs Taylor when they agree to be on the same side and stay there. This needs a hug. Like that kind of energy kind of goes throughout the whole movie.
It does.
Totally.
Speaking of IMDb trivia, there are currently 2 pieces of information listed on there, and you've already given us some great stuff. Marty Matulus talked about the Whitney Cummings
Sex doll.
that scene, that her famous Instagram alter ego. No, it was more than a doll. It had its own special. It co-hosted a special. He brought up that she donated that to the production to be chopped in half. But I was wondering if there's anything else that you think fans of the film might want to know.
No, I mean, like I said, it was a hard go. Like going back to that pandemic, like it was tough. The location was hard. We had, trying to keep a movie that's in one location is also really hard to keep interesting. And that was a big challenge for me. It was like, how do I keep this place looking cool? Like, how do we not make this stale? Like, so that's what we changed, camera angles. We changed the lighting in certain areas when you're in the same room, because it's hard to keep a room where all the guys are always going to be in the same spot, because that's where their instruments are going to be. You can't change that around. So you go back in that room so many times, you got to try to make it more just keep it different in ways, try to make it look a little bit different each time, or like come into it differently. It was challenging, but it was challenging fun trying to figure it all out and just make it all work,
Yeah. I think they did. I told you, me and him were talking about this in basically 2 main locations. It's the office and then it's there. But I mean, you don't feel like you're in the same house all day long. It's like, all right, here we go again. We're back in this room. And especially with Pat sleeping all over the place, you didn't know where you were.
I mean, the basement felt like 2 different locations within the same scene when before and after Grohl listens to the tapes. Just the way the lighting shifts in there, it feels like a completely different, it's complete tonal shift. It was awesome.
Yeah, and that was the cool thing, is we could get 2 different looks of the basement. The basement had the warm lighting and everything like that. And then when Pat and Nate go down there with the book, I basically told the DP, I was like, just think of this movie like this down here is the Well of Souls from Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I remember when we cut the first edit, when you use temp music to cut it, we actually used the music from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we used that, and it worked really good. But obviously that was John Williams' score, so we can't do that. But Roy Mayorga, who did the score, did a phenomenal job, mixing the John Carpenter theme and then making it very John Carpenter, and then ramping up the score at the end and making it very epic. He went from a very Carpenter-esque score, but when things get real, you start adding horns, you start adding all sorts of different instruments in that, and you make it, you bring the music and rise it with what's happening in the story. Yeah,
it kind of the darker tones in the score and in the song reminded me a little bit of the Lords of Salem, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Were they playing an L note?
Yeah, right. They were L sharp. That's what brought the witches down.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, there's a rumor, but it may be a fact, because we think it's a fact here. Can you tell us about the river of fake blood that wound up flowing down the street from the house of Encino?
100% real. That's 100%. Okay. I mean, that was real. So we actually had to build a whole set to do that. So we shot Rami and Whitney in the guest house. That's where Rami's room was in the story. He's in the guest house. And when we were like, well, look, we were trying to think of how are we going to do this? There's no way, because we realized that what we were about to do would probably completely destroy the interior of that place. So we had to go in the parking lot that we had, the house where you see the finale with Nate and Pat. We had to get all the cars and everything out of there, and we had to build a fake set of that facade. So it's totally when you first see them in that bedroom, it's real. And then when you get to that part, it's completely a set. So, and it looks, you never can tell, but yeah, we built that set. We had these cannons of blood. We had we had these giant things of blood. And once we had done that scene, at the end of the day, yeah, it's true. And there's pictures. People have posted pictures online of that river of blood going down the street. They're there. I've seen it. But I was walking to my car, and seriously, there was a flowing red river going down the street of Encino.
It's like Ghostbusters 2, Lord Vigo is a river of blood.
Yeah, right. It's like the ooze.
Evil.
Exactly.
And speaking of that chainsaw death scene, that might not only be the best death scene of the film, but it might be the best death scene that I've ever seen.
I don't think death gets any better than that.
Yeah, easily in the top 10. Studio 666 has no shortage of insane, elaborate, awesome deaths. Do you have a personal favorite, and what did that process look like for you creatively coming up with those scenarios?
I love the Rami one. I mean, I love them all. I think they're all really great. The Rami one was especially great because of how much blood we used. The Taylor one's phenomenal. I thought that came out great.
Here you go, man. Finish the song.
You
The cherry on top of the Taylor one is this all the way down. When you flick off the part of the body that wouldn't even be able to see you if it was alive.
It went for fatality.
I know. That was, and again, that was improv. That was Dave. We had him do a take where he did devil horns all the way down, and then the next take we did the take where and Dave was like, "Let me do this one." We're like, "Yeah, do it." And so he did that take on that one, and of course we were all laughing when he did it. We're like, "Yep, that's when you know you got it. Like that's the one we're gonna use."
And not to mention, shout out to the Mortal Kombat callback fatality right there. Like I said, that was Kung Lao all the way. I loved it.
Throwing that hat, chopping up heads.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell which one was the best one. I love them all actually, but Rami, I think the Rami one for how much went into that was pretty intense. Because it is practical. That whole thing, that sequence is all practical.
Oh, it looked awesome. He said that he was very appreciative of the fact that they that role let them finish.
Bro code. I told you it's bro code. I'm not gonna kill you for you. Never mind. Okay. Yeah.
There's no shortage of nods to classic horror films in Studio 666. My favorite is the possessed talking raccoon on the wall happening directly after like finding the Necronomicon for the first time. It's a cool callback to Evil Dead 2. Is there an Easter egg in the film that you're most proud of?
There's a lot of Easter eggs in there, and that was intentional, obviously, to do that. Like the delivery guy going upstairs is an Exorcist shot, you know. The shears coming up is the burning. The shadow people in the movie is a nod to the fog. Dave coming up out of the pool is a nod to Friday the 13th. Like, you know,
oh yeah.
And then you know, it's even the spirits in the end that's a nod to Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, really, we that was exactly what I was like. We're gonna do that because it's cool. We shot those ghosts all practical in a you know all those spirits we shot practically in a water tank at one of the producers' houses because he had a pool with a window. We had a puppeteer doing all that stuff, and we added a little bit of CG to it to make it look more spiritual.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm wrong for saying this. I don't know if animals can be racist towards an animal, but I kept thinking that was Rocket from fucking the Avengers. That raccoon looked. I don't know if all raccoons look alike, but I had to say that. All right, here we go. All right.
Yeah, there you go. No, that was more Evil Dead nod, just like you guys said. You know, when the stuffed animals become alive. We made amazing. The raccoon was more of a spiritual siren, is what kind of we came up with. And it was funny because we weren't supposed to do that. It's not in the script. But basically, me and my buddy Marcus Dunstan were sitting one night and we were talking about things to do that. And we're like, what happens if, you know, we make that like all of a sudden when they find the book that the actual like the spirits start overwhelming things. And the raccoon corpse itself like starts to become like this possessed, like cursed siren, which conjures up what you see happens next. And that's kind of the idea of it. But it was a nod back to the Evil Dead, like, you know, when Ash is looking around and the freaking deer.
How was that sound made with the raccoon? Because that was very jarring.
Okay. So this is terrible. But I said we need something that's actually like kind of chilling and like makes your skin crawl. So I went online and people might hate me for this one, but I went online and I found sounds of rabbits dying.
Oh, that'll do it.
I like it.
And I can say that because me and my wife have 2 pet rabbits and we love them. They're free roaming rabbits in the house. They're hilarious. But there's a certain noise that these animals make that is actually bone chillingly horrible. And that is actually a mix of a couple different versions of it that we mixed in with the raccoon scream.
That is so cool.
That's amazing. Wow,
that's like an accidental nod to Pet Cemetery too. Now, told you to get those rabbits, Drew boy.
Right?
Now you mentioned in another interview with LRM that you already have ideas for a sequel. Can you give us a morsel, if you can, of one of the potential ideas that may be floating around in your head regarding that, if you can?
Oh, that's the thing. You can't give away your plots because you never know if you'll come back to do it.
True. This is true.
I knew that might be a response, but we still had to ask.
But you made me ask. You could have asked.
We'll see what happens. You know, like once this movie comes out on BOD and people start really watching it, you know, like
we already said, we feel this is going to be a cult classic. Sometimes it takes people a while to catch on to stuff, but I promise you, when they find it, they're gonna be like, "What the fuck is this? Yo, no, you got to see this." So yeah, it has that feel.
Yeah. And honestly, if it becomes a cult classic, we won. I mean, that's really what we were set out to do in this thing. We were trying to make a movie that basically emulates those kind of old movies that you loved. And, you know, it's really a movie that you're going to want to put on at a party in the background and just laugh with friends. You know, to me, that's ultimately what I wanted to create here with Dave and the guys. And they also wanted to make a movie like this. We never honestly thought this movie was going to go to all the screens they did. You know, we were just kind of like, we're just making a fun movie and hopefully people really enjoy it. And all of a sudden, next thing we know, they send it out to a bunch of theaters and we're like, okay.
All right, let's go.
You pulled it off. We watched it twice and thoroughly enjoyed it both times. And exactly that. It's like get as many people as you can in the room to watch it with you, laugh your asses off. Yeah. It's a great time.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's like, and I'm proud of it. Like I love what we did. Dave and the guys love what we did. We had a blast making the thing.
You could tell. Yeah, it came out awesome. Before we move on, we would like to hear not your best pitch for Studio 666, but what is the best compliment or praise that you've received about the movie, whether it be from family or friends or people that you admire in the industry?
The best compliment? Wow. I mean, it's really just talking like it's really talking to all you guys who actually love the movie. That's the best compliment to me. Like people don't realize how much blood, sweat, and tears you pour into making a movie and how long it takes to make a movie. And it's amazing you actually sometimes can get a movie like this made. Mm-hmm. It's moments like these that I find really fantastic that I can talk about the movie and then people want to talk about the movie that enjoyed the movie. That's the best experience for me. That's the best thing that I can do here and encourage people like the younger, filmmakers, the people that want to be out there making movies is that, look, man, we went out and did this movie. You can too. It's not unobtainable. That's what I take for it. Like, there's people who've been saying great things about the movie. There's people that hate the movie. Whatever. And you can't appease everybody. And we're not making an Oscar here. We're making fun. And I just want people to know that we had fun doing it. And I want people that are out there that want to be filmmakers and want to make movies to realize, it takes a lot to make these films. It's a lot of hard work. And when you see the results and you're proud of it, in the end, that it really pays off. And then talking to people like you and other people, that want to talk about the movie that thoroughly enjoyed it. To me, that's the best experience.
Thank you. In your opinion, what is the best horror film?
That's going to be a tough one because, I'm always worried about making people mad about what I say because there's a whole different, it depends on what you say is the best horror film. You know what I mean?
We like presenting these questions that only can get definitive answers. I really put you in a corner.
But it's cool because I usually say, to me, I think one of the best horror films ever made is The Thing. People will argue with me saying that's a sci-fi movie. And I'm like, no, man, like the practical effects, the gore and how gnarly it is, to me, that's an amazing horror film. A lot of people run around being like Halloween or, Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. Great movies. But for me, like something that really affected me a lot is The Thing, is John Carpenter's The Thing, because it's so out there and bizarre and the practical effects were so good. And the storyline was just so awesome that like, I love that movie. I think it's one of the best. But I could go on and on about how awesome a bunch of other movies are. You know what I mean? Like,
you could definitely see the influence in The Thing, and when Grohl's vomit turns into Greg Knoll, and that reveal that was very Thing-esque.
I love that part.
Yeah.
Well, the stuff that we did with that makeup stuff was actually the same material that was used in the remake of The Blob.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Nice. So Tony Gardner, our makeup guy, he did The Blob. So he had all the right stuff. So all that weird purpley stuff, I even said, keep it the way The Blob looked. And that's why it's all very weirdly purple. It is exactly the material.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Now, I want to say this, but a lot of people know about SAG and the Screen Actors Guild, but I want to say we would like to say congratulations on getting your DGA card in 2019. So
and recently signing with UTA and 3 Arts, right?
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
congratulations.
Yeah, so what we want to ask, there's a lot of fans out there, millions watching this episode right now when it's going to air. What advice would you give to aspiring directors out there who want to get into this craft and try to do what you guys do?
I would say don't let people tell you that you can't. And I had so many people tell me, it's another person that's going to go do this, or like even when I was becoming a Steadicam operator, I had, like, when I was a grip, I'll never forget when I told people that I was going to be a camera operator and a Steadicam guy. I remember him going, "Oh, just so we need another Steadicam operator. Good luck." And it's like those things. And you just got to look at that and go, all right, man, I'm just going to try harder now, because, if you're going to be that kind of attitude, then I'm going to show you that I can actually do what I want, what I'm set out to do. My advice is don't ever let anyone tell you can't do it. And honestly, get out there with a camera, make some home movies, like experiment with editing, learn how things work, get out there and work on film sets, learn the set etiquette before you go to like a film school. Next thing you know, I just graduated film school. I'm a director. What's going to be hard for you is when you get on a set and you don't know how long it takes for a makeup effect to happen, or you don't know what it takes to get a shot with a crane or a techno crane, or you don't know what it's going to take. The time management, the skills of learning it on set is vital. I say, don't ever give up on it. go learn the craft, get in there, get your feet on a set and like learn everything and then pursue it. Like I'm 20 years into this business. I came out to LA to be a director, but I went on a different path. And it actually, for me, I think was an amazing journey and still is. I still camera operate. I'm not like, I do whatever. I enjoy it. I enjoy everything. I still learn to this day. 20 years later, old man McDonnell is still learning all the new stuff on set.
Yeah, I could definitely say researching you and going through your social media, you've led in a very awesome career. No matter where you're at in the crew, the films you've been a part of has just been amazing, and you could tell that you genuinely have a love for what you're doing. It always seems like you're a true fan of film.
You got to love what you're doing. Why do a job if you're miserable at it?
Yeah. All right. But before we say goodbye, are there any parting words that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Go out, see Studio 666. Go out, have a good time. Put it on at a party when it comes out. Have some drinks with your friends. If you love old school band movies, you're going to love this movie. If you love horror movies, hopefully you love this movie. If you love comedies, hopefully you laugh. That's what we set out to do. And I hope everybody just has a good time watching it. I just want people to have fun. That's all. And we had a great time making it. And that's what I want to leave everybody with. Go see the movie.
Thank you once again, BJ, for giving us your time and giving us an awesome film. Mm-hmm. Really appreciate it.
Yes.
And we are gonna. I don't know if you could put your hand up to the screen, but we're gonna end this on a
Pearl Jam high five, baby.
High five,
spoken.
Thank you.